My dad said I dressed like a slut and told me to cover up, so I gave him exactly what he asked for. It started when I wore a tank top and shorts to the grocery store on a 90-degree day. You're not leaving the house dressed like a SLette, my dad said while I was grabbing my car keys. I looked down at my completely normal summer outfit. Cover yourself up because I'm not having my daughter walking around looking like she's for sale, he continued, his face red with anger. I went back upstairs and changed into jeans and a hoodie despite the heat, and he nodded approvingly while saying this was about respect and dignity and protecting my reputation. That night, I did some online shopping with his credit card since he cared so much about my clothing choices. Thank you for helping me understand modesty, I said the next morning, wearing a full-length denim dress that covered everything except my hands and face. He seemed pleased until we got to his office barbecue where everyone kept asking if I was feeling okay and why I was dressed for winter. She's exploring modest fashion, he explained uncomfortably while his coworkers exchanged concerned looks, and I stood there sweating through 3 layers of fabric. Monday, I wore a beekeeper's suit to school because dad had been very clear about covering up and protecting myself from unwanted attention. The principal called him within an hour, asking if everything was all right at home and whether I was being forced to wear extreme religious garments. It's just a phase, my dad told them, but I made sure to explain loudly in the main office that my father said my body was shameful and needed to be completely hidden from men's eyes. The counselor started taking notes while my dad's face turned purple. Tuesday brought his important client dinner at the country club, and I arrived in a full burqa I'd ordered express shipping from Amazon. This is our daughter, my dad said weakly, as his Japanese investors stared in complete confusion. They kept asking questions about our family's religious beliefs and whether this was common in American households, while I sat silently eating through my face covering. His biggest client pulled him aside to discuss their concerns about doing business with someone who had such extreme views about women, and I heard my dad desperately trying to explain it was just teenage rebellion. Wednesday, I upgraded to a hazmat suit for his company picnic because he'd mentioned protection so many times that biological protection seemed appropriate. His boss's wife cornered him by the potato salad to express her deep concern about what was happening in our home. If you need resources for controlling behavior or religious extremism, we have employee assistance programs, she said while I stood nearby in my yellow containment suit, explaining to anyone who asked that my dad said my skin was too dangerous to be exposed to the public. Thursday was parent-teacher conferences, and I wore a Victorian morning dress complete with a black veil that covered my entire face. My teacher asked my dad point blank if he was abusing me or forcing me into a cult while I sat there looking like a gothic ghost from 1850. She seems to be crying for help, the teacher said sternly, while my dad tried to explain that I was doing this to myself, but she'd already seen my essay about how my father called me a slut for wearing normal clothes. Friday, I went full throttle when I wore a full medieval suit of armor to his promotion announcement dinner, because nothing says covered up like actual metal plating. The clanking drew everyone's attention as I walked in, and his regional manager immediately asked why his daughter was dressed like she was going into battle. My dad says my body is a weapon that needs to be contained, I announced to the entire restaurant, and several people took out their phones to record while my dad tried to disappear into his chair. His promotion was put on hold pending an investigation into his home situation. Saturday morning, the neighbors had organized an intervention after seeing me mow the lawn in a radiation suit all week. We're concerned about your daughter's well-being, Mrs. Jacobs said, while 6 other concerned parents stood behind her. They documented everything with photos and timestamps, creating what they called evidence of escalating abuse. My dad kept insisting I was doing this to spite him, but I maintained perfect innocence and said I was just following his rules about modesty and covering my shameful body. By Sunday, his girlfriend had dumped him via text, saying she couldn't date someone who psychologically tortured his daughter. His boss had suggested he take family leave to deal with his issues, and Child Protective Services had opened a case file after receiving 17 different reports from concerned citizens. He sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands while I stood there in my newest purchase, which was a full deep-sea diving suit complete with brass helmet. Please stop this, he begged. But I reminded him that he'd said I dressed like a slut and needed to cover up. Fine, wear whatever you want, he said in defeat. But then his phone rang and his lawyer's name appeared on the screen. My mom had heard about everything from concerned friends and was filing for emergency custody based on psychological abuse. As he answered the phone, his face went white, and he looked at me with something dark in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Actually, forget the clothes, he said very quietly. I have a better idea for how to teach you a lesson. Full story on the channel below.